My name is Nicolaj, and I teamed up with PreSeed on this PreSeed Academy. For those of you who don't know me, I'm mainly an investor, really early stage, but also I've done a lot of my own startups, so I've done all the mistakes myself. And today the topic is on product market fit. Don't worry, we'll come more into that, why it's important. So the overall agenda for tonight is basically that I will start with approximately half an hour on what is really this product market fit and how is it seen from different positions. Why do these really bad investors like PreSeed or me ask these silly questions, and where I'm really this journey from an idea to something that is hopefully a successful company. And then I'm so happy to have Katrine here. Where are you, Katrine? Oh yeah, I've tried to convince Katrine for so long time to come and speak because the story, and we actually even have Christian, also her co-founder, somewhere. Yeah, here. And they have this fantastic story of how to come from your idea into this successful exit you had. And that journey is just what I believe is really the masterpiece on how to do it. And that's why I'm so happy that you come and share your lessons here. So that will be after me. We take the break. And then one of the issues with having like a speak with this is that it can tend to be too general, right? I'll speak about what happened for me 5 years ago, and the same with Katrine and Christian. So to do it really hands-on, we actually invited a startup up and talk about what they're doing right now. So we have Niels from Spaces. He is right there. And they will actually present their startup. Both, where are they now and the story, but also what they see as their challenges coming to the product market. So we try to go from my investor perspective. We have Katrine and Christian, or Katrine with their story of Canvas Dropper, and then we have the current case of Spaces, and of course some picks. So that's in short what we hope to be for tonight. But before we talk about the agenda for today, how many of you were here last month when we had tour? Because after reading Katrine's slide, I saw one thing. You have to look for retention, right? So I'm looking for retention. So how many are following from the first session to tonight? And last session we talked about how really to start, how to come up with that. And we have Triangle in from Auto Yo-Yo. And if I should sum up what I hope that those of you who are here learned last time was really that your initial idea is most likely wrong. That is at least in all my startups. And what separates the successful startups from the not successful is what happens next. It takes a lot of time. And actually the biggest risk you can do is if you scale too fast. If you are, when you believe is something that is right, and you suddenly have 10 or 15 people, it's really expensive to change, right? Because you said that you want to go into that market and you are hired 4 sales people to go into that market. Then after 3 months you decide to go right instead. You have the wrong people. So don't scale too fast. And you need to start testing your assumptions now. So this session today is actually a natural extension of what we discussed last time. Because last time we discussed that you need to change. But how to do it is then the topic of today. And that is really a bumpy journey for most of us. It can seem so fantastic when you read the newspaper about any startup, whether that is Canvas Dropper or any startup we know, or Auto Yo-Yo. It can seem like, oh my God, they just nailed it. What you don't read is this journey where most of our startups have went bankrupt several times, or close to bankrupt several times, because it takes so long time. So that would be the topic of today, is how to come from that idea where you say, oh, go out and test your assumptions, to actually do it. What are these natural phases you go through? Okay? So, and I was not smart enough, so I separated in 2 different slideshows. So, how many of you have heard this term product market fit before? No. What does it mean? Yeah?
The product fits the market.
The product fits the market. Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
Hit the right audience with my product.
Yeah. So again, something about that there is this product that your customers want. Yeah. What else?
Timing.
Sumi?
Good timing.
Good timing, yeah. Which of course, if you're too early or too late, yeah, sometimes there is no market for it. Yeah.
Validating demand.
Yeah. So basically, there's difference between talking about it that I think you want my product and actually have delivered it. Yeah. So some proof, some validation. Yeah. Yeah. What else? Because I just did what. Okay. So what I want to talk about is basically what is it, and how it fit into the different stages of the startup, and what are the challenges most of us are facing on reaching those. And this is pure non-scientific. So even though I teach at CBS, this is based on both gut feeling and wet finger analysis. So this is just on these different stages I see in the startups, in many startups I meet again and again. So coming back to what product market fit is. So what we should all do, of course, we start on Wikipedia, right? And Wikipedia have this really, really broad definition, right? It's something about it satisfies a strong market demand. And I guess that's one of the reasons why it's such fluffy definition. Because when you then meet a startup that claims they have product market fit, there's typically a difference between what you believe and what I believe. And that's basically the topic of the next 20 minutes for me, is try to go into the different stages. Because you could claim that many startups that have got some kind of seed funding maybe have this. But they typically have them in a limited scale, and that's what we'll discuss later. So, the reason for this is that I just took a picture from a pitch competition, right? That I meet many of these startups, and then I read their pitch decks, and they claim they have reached this product market fit. But then, according to my definition, they haven't, because I'm looking for something else than they do. And I can guarantee you, when you're talking to different kind of investors, they'll be looking for something different. So as Crystal was saying, is that they go in an early stage where there is some degree of product market fit. But I'll say some degree because it's very, very limited. And that is maybe that we've sold to 5 customers. Where if you want real venture capital, they might want that you're sold to 5,000 customers. These are the different phases in product market fit. So, where does it all start? How many of you have started a company? Yeah. And of course it should start with a dream, right? You start with, oh my God, I believe that there's something to be solved. And that could be everything. That could be in here. Oh my God, I want a better AV system. I want some better chairs. I want whatever. That is where it starts. But how many of you have bad ideas like I do? Because I get a lot of ideas, right? Yeah. How many of you have that? Yeah. You know, have any of you have been out there, have tested an idea that was really, really bad, but you thought it was fantastic? Yeah. What was it?
It was something to measure vitamins and tell you how healthy you were on blood samples. Nobody wanted to have blood samples taken all the time.
No.
So
you thought it was a good idea, and it was not really. Right? But again, there's nothing wrong with that, but because it has to start somewhere. When all of us start a new company or dream about starting a new company, it has to start with, oh my God, this is really important. I think the problem is just that what is important for you is maybe not important for me, right? But even now today, when we say, oh my God, ideas are worthless or whatever, I still think that they're not, because this is actually a slide I stolen from Yannick, the CEO of Penneo, because he actually presented this slide during a board meeting. And one of the early board meetings, he had to present what is the differentiation for Penneo between the competition. And he honestly had this slide. It is about a dream, a heart, and an end. And it can seem ridiculous, right? But it's not really, because what separates, if you had this idea, or any idea you have, I can guarantee you there are hundreds of people in the world that have the exact same idea right now. There's nothing wrong with that. I actually have been worried if I was the only one who had an idea, because most likely then there's no problem to solve. So yes, it's a good start. But try go out to investors and say, I have this fantastic idea. What will they ask?
who would buy it?
Yeah, who would buy it? What else?
Validation.
Yeah, they will ask, why do you think this is a good idea? Right? So this is phase one, right? This is phase one, I have an idea. But you quickly need to come to phase two. That is that, oh my God, we are quite confident that a lot of people have this, or enough people have this problem. How many of you have had a market research course at CBS or somewhere else? Yeah. So how would you normally validate that? So you have this idea, I'm this skeptical guy saying you should make sure other people also have this idea. What would you do?
Market research.
Yeah, what kind of market research could that be?
Ask potential customers.
Yeah, ask potential customers, yeah. What else?
Survey or focus groups.
Yeah, there's this big group that is, you could say that the quantitative stuff like on a scale from 1 to 5, blah, blah. And then there's the other one where I try to go in dialogue with you, understand you. How many of you have participated in a focus group? Stuff like that, right? So normally that will be the next step. And I become a little bit cynical about that. Because, so let's go back. How many of you have Snapchat on your mobile phone right now? So imagine 5 years ago, I was hired to do this market research study to find out whether there was a market need for Snapchat. What do you think the result would be? And the value prop will something be like, you can send a text message and it'll be deleted after 10 seconds, right? Isn't that sort of, right? What do you think the conclusion would be?
Nobody
No need.
wants it.
Yeah. And it's really hard, right? Because most of us, we are really in the top of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? We're not, sorry to say, none of us are buying clothes because we freeze. None of us are buying a new car because we want from A to B. Why are we buying a new car?
We like it
Why do you like it?
because the others see.
Because the other sees you, you think you're successful, right? Why are you buying a BMW and not a Skoda? Because you know what? So the problem is when you're in that top, it's really, really hard to understand what are really our needs. You know, and especially when you talk about innovative stuff. I'm 100% sure that if we have a need that all of us knew, so you have a nice blue shirt, right? So if I interview about a new type of shirt and said, do you like it to be a little bit thicker? Do you like another color? I actually think that you could understand that because you understand the need, you know. And that goes for many existing product categories if you have a computer or a soft drink or whatever. But when you're talking something really, really new, my claim is that most consumers have no clue, including myself. Ask me what kind of app I will download next year. I don't know. So it's really, really hard to come to that phase. And then, of course, some of you will say, but businesses, they are objective, right? They're this rational, cool group of companies that really know what they want. I want to take one example, also from, no, this is actually from Recon. So, should I take that now? One more consumer. Okay, because it's so fun. So my friend, he developed this goggle, ski goggle with electronics, and he hired this fancy professor from Canada to do a survey on that. And one of them was really, is there a market need for built-in cameras? Right? Can you see my point? So we have this camera, should there be built-in cameras? How many of you think there should be built-in cameras? Why?
It's cool.
It's cool, yeah.
So nowadays I'm using Google Pro, so
At that point in time, this is 2010.
okay.
Actually, the conclusion were that no one wanted, right? And then 9 months later, all these stats were going on the slopes, and all asked, why isn't there a built-in camera? It's really, really hard to foresee your own needs. But then you will say, but businesses, they're smart. This is, again, a Purdue example. I'm just saying, so we went out in year one and talked with these accountants. And we thought that accountants would be great for a digital signature solution. How many of you have a holding company? So you have made an annual report here in these days, right? In April, May. And we thought there was a great business case of having these annual reports signed digitally. And then we went out to these accountants. And 95% of the accountants say, we don't need it. And then 3 years later, all the accountants are using it. They couldn't foresee their own need. And I see that again and again for all kinds of products is that we, including myself, we don't know what we need. It's only a small proportion of people that are really innovative in that specific area. And it might be that I'm innovative in some stuff and not in others. So I might be innovative in consumer electronics, but when it comes to another product category, I'm not. Yeah?
I would say even more than we don't know what we need is that we're very social animals.
Yeah.
And so our demand for something is very much driven by other people's demand
Exactly.
for the same thing.
Yeah. And that's why we don't want, of course, come back to the car, right?
Yeah.
So is a car cool or not? That means,
Or the camera on the head. Well, I don't need it until everyone has it. Then I really need it because that's what that's what you do now.
Yeah, that's what you do now, right? But I think that's the conclusion is that it's really, really hard to foresee.
Yeah.
So I don't know how the rest, or I have an opinion about what other investors would think about market research, but for me it matters absolutely nothing. That people can come and say they've spoken to 400 consumers and 93% of them want it, I don't care. You can give me any product, there's a small business proposal here. So if you have a business and you want 93% of people to say yes to it, just come to me, we can make a proposal because I can design a study so all people would say yes. And it has zero validity. So the problem with that phase 2 is that it doesn't really work. I think a small note, if you really want to do stuff like that, you should read the MOM test. How many of you know this book? It's a really, really good book. It's actually written by a guy who was irritated by the fact that no one wanted to use the stuff that he was forced to build. And then he realized that he needed to use other kind of market research. And the whole thing is basically that people are polite. It's not only because we don't want or don't know what we need, but also because we're polite. So when I come to you and have this fantastic idea, you will most likely say, go ahead, do it. Right? So how do you get a real answer out? And that is in short about telling or understanding the customer's problem and not really forcing the solution onto them. Long story. We don't have time for that. I can highly recommend reading it. But in short, you start with an idea, you try to go out and verify it by market research, but that has very limited validity. So you quickly need to come to phase 3, which is that they've actually bought into the solution. Because there's a big difference between saying, yeah, we need it, to actually have bought into it. And there could be different stages of that. And ideally, of course, before we have made it. Because as we've seen about, all our startups are basically unsuccessful in first attempt. So hopefully we can really try to use it, this lean approach where I can build something really lean and get your feedback. And it sounds so fantastic easy, right? It's just like, it's really, really hard. I think there's basically 2 ways to make sure that feedback you get from users are valid. And that is either time or money. And of course, in an ideal world, I want to have an idea for something new, and I want to go out to you and you pay up front, right? It's fantastic. I want to build a new car and I can get money from all of you 3 years in advance. Yes, you can do that if you're Elon Musk. If you're Nicolaj Højer Nielsen, most likely not. So we come back. So of course it's great if you can do that because that's basically also why crowdfunding is so fantastic, right? Because many of these crowdfunded projects would have a really, really hard time raising money because no one really believed in the market demand. But when they can go out and say, hey, I already have 2,000 users who are paid up front, that's a really, really strong indication. But for many of us, it's just really, really hard to get it because, maybe people don't really want to pay up front. And there you have time, right? So if I can show that I have customers or users who dedicate time, then it's really valuable. Imagine if you want to launch an app, right? And I go out to all of you and say, I have this cool idea for an app. Would you pay me 1,000 kroner each up front and then you get it? How many are interested in my app? Not that many, right?
I can develop.
Yeah. For a small fee. So for most of the consumer space, we're back to some kind of time commitment, right? So that's why every time we have a new app, I don't really ask about how much revenue they have. I ask how many users do we have, how often do we use it, etc., etc. the good thing about how many are working in B2B? Yeah, yeah. The good thing about business to business is actually that there are a willingness to pay money, right?
Yeah.
Where unlike in the B2C, before I really have shown the full version, whatever, it's really hard to charge money, you know. How many apps do you have on average on your phone? You think? 100? 200? 30? How many have you paid for? How many have paid for an app within the last week? Oh, one. Yeah. Right. It's really hard. The good thing is if you can solve a problem in a business-to-business setting, there is actually a willingness to be committed. So if you want to do, how many of you work in software in general? Right? So you meet this one company and you think that you can solve a problem for them. There's a big chance you can commit them up front if they really have a problem and they really trust you. Right? And that's why I really like the drawing by Steve Blank about early evangelists, because there's just a big difference between these customers. All of them might have the problem, but how many of them are aware they have a problem? And how many of them are really interested in working on a solution? The problem is that these are most likely the ones that will buy in 8 years, right? Because if you should try to convince rainmaking out here they have a problem with the sound, it's really a hard sell, right? But if you are working with someone that already have built up the internal solution, right? The problem is just that up here, you know, that is the product life cycle. That is basically the 2 or 3% of companies. So whenever I meet a business-to-business startup, I basically say, okay, who should build the product? Okay, that's you. Great. Who should sell the product? That's your co-founder there. And then I will ask her, are you willing to call 2,000 companies next year? Right? Because if you, it's really, really hard to find these from the outside. It most often involves calling, meeting a lot of customers. But again, the good thing is you can meet these 100 companies and you can be lucky to commit 50 of those. That's a business to business. The business to consumer is a little bit different. Of course, if you are in some different categories, this is for instance, you know, how many of you know Kasper Brandi, one of my former students? Really, really cool guy who made this lab press. And he now crowdfunding the second product as we speak at Kickstarter. Fantastic guy. That you can do when you have gimmicks, when you have physical products, whatever. That you can't do when you have a consumer app, so to say. Put that on Kickstarter, good luck. So what should the rest of us do? How can we get this commitment? Because again, remember the background. The background is that whatever you just say to me, I don't believe it. You say you want my product, but it's just BS, right? So I want this commitment. How can you show commitment? Yeah, I tried. They're not.
Results.
Yeah, but they can pay with that time, right? So then we're back to retention and use of things, right? So for most business to consumer startups, the way to measure progress is in the early phases is measuring whether people really like the product or the early version they have. And that is normally a free version or semi-free version. And that we're back to, so if you work with consumer stuff, there's one word you need to understand, and that's cohort analysis. We don't have the time to go into that today, but that is really, so how are your consumers behaving? So I was talking to a gentleman here before, and he was telling me that he was working on a consumer app. He said he had 1,500 users. What was the next question I asked him? Yeah, how many daily users do you have? Which is very, very simple, right? You have 1,500 who have signed up. But are 800 of them using the product or 200? And how is it going after day 2 or 3 and 4, right? And that's really the critical part in the beginning. So after all this is really the struggle, right? Coming to this phase of phase 4, normally for most of us take 2 or 3 years. And I define this phase 4 as, well, we have managed to solve a problem, but typically in limited scale. So that could be if you're a B2B SaaS provider, you maybe have managed to get these 50 or 100 paying customers. If you're in B2C, maybe you have 10,000 users and they're actually using your product. You can actually see that they like your product, right? But what's wrong? What's still missing?
They're not paying.
Yeah, maybe they're not paying. What else?
Development of the idea.
Yeah, in what way?
Development of the idea. Business development.
I don't understand.
So now we can get more.
Yeah. Well, you can grow after that, right? So I've shown I can get 50 customers, but can I get 5,000, right? Yeah. So yeah.
For me, is the acquisition cost is usually still high. Oh, that's for our firm anyway. Acquisition cost might be too high. Oh
Yeah.
Oh no.
2 slides. You know. Yeah. All that thought for 2 slides, right? And then you go out and talk with PreSeed or me, right? And then suddenly this fantastic feeling of made it, you suddenly, oh my God, why? Because we will ask a lot of hard questions. Because we think, of course, that we're impressed that you've got these 50 customers, but we'll start talking about something else. So typically, this is actually the entire the focus on next session, but I'll go a little bit into it. And that is customer acquisition cost or customer life. Okay, we do that first. So yeah. So the first one will then here be, yeah, but what does it cost to get a customer, right? So you have got these first 50 customers. That is fantastic. But you had 5 people working on that for 1 year. That means that customer acquisition cost is, I'm just guessing, 100,000 kroner, right? Something like that. So there'll basically be 2 scenarios. Either you have a scenario where your customer acquisition costs are relatively high, and you will of course explain that to be that's because we had a shitty product, and now we're launching a new product, and now the customers will just call. And I have this lead list. I had 50 paying customers, and I have a lead list of 2,000. And when I launch version 2.13, they will just come. That's one scenario. And then we have the other scenario where you actually have documented relatively low customer acquisition cost. But then we don't believe that you're able to replicate that. Because maybe the first 50 customers is your uncle's company and someone you knew from the past, or they're located in a specific area of Denmark, and can you really replicate that? But again, one of the first things we'll ask is about how much does it cost you to get a customer? Because before you have shown that, which is also called unit economics, before we don't really believe that you can replicate it. So customer acquisition cost is one. And that of course should be matched to what is the lifetime value of customer. So now you have got this new customer of 100,000 kroner. That is okay if we believe that the value is 500,000. Okay, that's 20%, that's 1 to 5, that's great. But the problem is in the early stage is that your first customers have gotten it more or less for free, right? So at least when I work, of course you want to pre-commit the customer, but a normal subscription should might be 5,000 kroner a month, but since you're the first customer, you pay 200, right? That's at least how I act when I'm in the receiving end, right? And I have to try a new software, I say, yeah, but I want it almost for free. So it can be hard to document this customer lifetime value in the early stages, but that's what we're looking for. So we're looking for this ratio between customer acquisition cost and lifetime value. But that's unfortunately not enough. What is missing? So even if you can show this ratio, what could be the problem before you really made it in the product market fit? So what are the missing parts? Yeah.
Time.
Time in what way?
How long it takes to
Yeah.
pay back.
So of course it could be that you get your money back in 20 years. That's really annoying from a cash flow perspective. Yeah. It's normally not a big problem, but you're right. What else?
Scalability, but you kind of mentioned that already.
Yeah. But you're totally right. That's a scalability, right? Because the problem is that you're now shown you can get these 50 customers at a reasonable cost, but can you replicate that? And typically there are two issues that most startups are facing. Either it's something about that you're in a really, really small niche, that you have secured these 50 companies in Bornholm, or in a small segment of companies where you seem to have an edge because you're the only one who serve fish smugglers in Bornholm or something like that, right? A small niche. So you quickly say, but can you scale that? And especially since we're based in Europe, right? Because many of our startups, we can't survive based upon Denmark alone. So that's a big difference, and one of the reasons why we have a hard time getting the big exits in Europe, that is that Europe is really 25 or 30 different markets, right? So yes, you made it, you got 50 customers in Denmark, but can you get 500 customers in Germany? Do they have another competitive situation there? Do they have the same need, etc., etc.? So it's not enough to show customer acquisition cost and lifetime value. You have to show that the addressable market is big enough. And the addressable market is what the investor believes that you are able to get. Right? So it's not that, oh my God, this market in Europe is fantastically big. Or it's not only this small, it's actually a big group of companies that are target market. But if you only have customers in a small group of that, and I know that for a fact because I also tend to believe exactly the same when I'm a potential investor, and when I meet these startups that have gotten ex-customers in Denmark and say they're going to conquer the world, can they really do it? Can they really go into Sweden and Norway, etc.? So in short, phase 4 is where you have this in small scale, but can you really build a larger company with a viable business model? There you need to go to phase 5, and that involves showing these unit economics. And this just takes a lot of time. In all of my startups, every time I go into a new startup, I believe that we can fix this in 6 to 9 months. And all the pitch decks I see, it's something like in year 1, no revenue, but in 2 and 3, it's just massive. And I'm so happy that there's actually a report that documents that it takes 2 and 3 times longer, and that is based on analysis of 3,200 IT startups. And that fits very well my experience, that this phase, going from these first small customers here into actually having a real business, takes 2, 3, 4 years. So the magic in this is not to do it fast, of course we'll hope. The magic is how can we avoid going bankrupt in that really, really hard period. Because this is not fun, right? It's not fun finding out that your initial assumptions are not working. So for those of you who were here last month, it's quite fun that a few weeks later, in end of March, actually Yo-Yo then raised 5 million euro. And I took a screenshot here, and it's quite fun to see that actually in the press release from PreSeed, or no, it's actually PreSeed Capital, is that they actually mentioned that now Yo-Yo have their unit economics in place, right? And that's not only about getting a lot of new customers. That is about, can we get them and serve them in a financially viable way? In other words, can I show that it cost me 2,000 euro to get a new restaurant, and that they will stay for customers for a long time, so they have a lifetime value that is large, and not the least, that they have been able to grow in several markets. So Yo-Yo is not only in Denmark now, they are in Denmark, Ireland, England, and so on. Right? So my conclusion in all this is that there are really many different phases in product market fit. And it's really, really hard to get there. My conclusion is that market research don't work. And that is when I see market research in the superficial way, where I ask you for some input. Would you like that on a scale to 1 to 5, whatever? Sorry to say, it doesn't work. So what can you get? You need to get commitment. And if you're in the B2B world, you can get them to commit money. Either money up front, which is great, or a letter of intent where they commit money if you solve this problem for them. If you're in the B2C world, it's harder. Of course, if you have a physical product, you might be able to crowdfund it, and if you do that, that is fantastic. Otherwise, you're really back to user analysis, finding out, how many users are really loving that product, and it's really important that you don't scale your business until you've really nailed that. And again, I'm sorry, it takes years. If you can find a startup that have nailed that in less than 6-12 months, it's really fantastic.